Gaurav, we were just discussing Pranay and I as he also continues to be with us. You've mentioned Pahalgam. You've mentioned how this entire counter-terrorism is a stance that India has taken on the global platform time and again, zero tolerance towards terrorism. But only a month back, in fact, if I'm not wrong, I was mentioning about the defense ministers summit as a part of the SCO itself and how India refused to sign the joint statement because there was no mention of the terror attack, despite India calling out Pakistan on that at that very forum as well. So tomorrow will be very important and crucial to see. In fact, I would say, for that matter, to test this revival of ties between India and China, given that terrorism was also brought in as a subject in the bilateral discussion, to see whether China takes the similar stance, or rather China takes a stance supporting India in its counter-terrorist measures.
You know, India's effort bilaterally, yes, we are moving forward on that, but on a multilateral level, do we see a forward movement in a forum where you also have Pakistan as a member? Perhaps unlikely. And that, like I said, remains one of the biggest drawbacks or failures of Shanghai Cooperation Organization as an entity, for the reason that it was established to combat terrorism and extremism. When you talk about the regional anti-terror system, their RATS outfit, that entire effort to battle terror fails because you have a terrorist like Hafiz Saeed or a Masood Azhar. And remember, China had blocked the sanctions on terrorists like Masood Azhar, or their designation as global terrorists at United Nations Security Council 1267 Sanctions Committee. And for a very long time, until either they ran out of options or there was something else that they could gain out of this situation. So in principle, everyone talks about battling terror, but when you have actual ground realities, China's entire effort only remains that none of that terror that India is facing comes and bleeds China, especially in either Xinjiang region where 1 million people have been put in what the West describes as concentration camps. But the situation very clearly simply remains that India continues to battle to ensure Pakistan state-sponsored terror is called out. At the same time, India does not rely on global powers or the world to condemn Pakistan terror. We've moved beyond. We slam them on ground. Look at the manner in which 9 terror camps, including Bahawalpur and Muridke, were taken down. And when Pakistan tried to respond, despite those Chinese satellites and assistance, 11 Pakistani air bases and radar stations, including those Honki 16s and Honki 9, HQ 16 and HQ 9 Chinese missile defense systems were taken down. So that just shows how capable India militarily is on its own. That you may have had China, Turkey and Pakistan coming together. Ultimately, in Operation Sindoor, India came out on top.
Absolutely. Gaurav, we're discussing about terrorism being mentioned in the statement, but let's also take a closer look at the economic ties and how that may play out in the upcoming days. You have raised this point a couple of times ever since the bilateral meeting has taken place, that India still stands at a 4 trillion economy while we are looking at an 18 trillion economy for China. So being equals in that relationship, while India has maintained that, for peace and tranquility at the borders to be maintained, for an economic relation, for a successful economic collaboration, this also seems to be the reality of the day. We have to look at closer issues like the particular trade deficit that India and China still have to address. These are sore points, or rather closer points finer points that need to be looked at when we speak of the economic relation furthering between these two nations.
Oh, you're absolutely right. The trade imbalance between India and China stands at $100 billion. When we started reporting this story, when I'd come here in 2013, when Dr. Manmohan Singh, then Prime Minister, was signing the Border Defense Cooperation Agreement between India and China, that time it stood at $60 billion, and that was seen as alarming. And then it gradually kept creeping up and rising to $99.2 billion currently. And God forbid, if it goes higher, it just becomes untenable. However, it is a ground reality. India is seeking greater access to Chinese markets. How do we get greater access to Chinese markets? What are goods that we can produce and export to China? What are services that we can provide to China? These are various avenues. And will China give India more access? It's been, when we speak of opacity, there is the Great China Wall, and literally and figuratively, it's the Great China Wall that our diplomats bang their heads against, seeking greater access to Indian goods and services to enter Chinese markets. So gradually, India is hoping that, given the current situation in the world, when both India and China are dealing with the United States of America and the tariffs that are being imposed, are there measures that can be taken? Do keep in mind, it's not just India and China, Japan and China, and they have historic, civilizational issues between them. South Korea and China, there are new alignments that are taking place in this region to deal with Trump tariffs, and Japan and South Korea are treaty allies of the United States of America. So things are changing. Things are changing fast, and it's a flux out there. In this flux, what is it that we can best get out of this situation is the effort. Short term, medium term, long term, we shall see. But from what my sources are telling me, some were trying to say that there could be a Russia, India, China trilateral. My sources are telling me there is no trilateral that is happening per se, because India very clearly wants to have two sets of relationships: India-Russia bilateral and India-China bilateral. That is something which is very clear. Similarly, India-America relationship on a different level, and India's relationship with the European Union or with the United Kingdom at a different level. That is why, if you notice, America is now trying to put pressure on Europe and EU to put sanctions on India. But it's India's independent relationship with these countries and associations that hold India in good stead. That's the strength that somebody was trying to explain to me, why we are keen on bilateral relations being strong and not becoming a part of any just two nation or three nation or four nation groupings per se. SCO is a different story. It's an important grouping. We want to have a say here. That's why we are a part of it. BRICS is a very important grouping. We want a say there. We are a founding member, so we are there. But a Russia, India, China trilateral, this isn't the right time for it, is what sources tell me.
There is a tricky balancing act that's being played by India for sure at this given point, if we are to look at how the geopolitical landscape has in fact come out to play itself. Gaurav, thank you for joining us.